Our refrigerator broke down and we lost hundreds of dollars in food. It was a huge ordeal. It was a lot of work, to be honest, but we managed to avert a financial crisis, and that's what I want to talk about today. So stick around. Hi friends, and welcome to the Budget Bounce. If we haven't met yet, I'm Jen, and we talk all about living life on a budget, saving for our future, paying down debt, and all the life that happens along the way on this channel. If those are things that interest you, you're going to hit that subscribe button down below and tap the bell so you'll get notified every time I post a new video. So today we're talking about life that happens along the way. So this is going to be kind of a story time, but I feel like there may be some lessons in here to help you get prepared for if something like this should happen, whether it be your refrigerator or some other major appliance. Making the decision about how you're going to replace the thing that is not a want, but a need, that might be a more expensive item in terms of, the way you plan on spending your money. So let me just share what happened. So it's a Thursday night. I have actually not been in our kitchen for about 24 hours. On that particular day, I was gone for, I had to work out, on site at the office that day. And then we had something afterwards, right after work, that we went out for a little bit. And we didn't get home till almost 8:30. And I went to go get a drink out of the refrigerator and opened the refrigerator and realized that it was not cool at all. It didn't smell good either. In fact, it smelled pretty awful. And that's when I realized there was a problem. And then I checked and nothing in there was cold. I immediately opened up our freezer on the bottom and checked everything. And I could see immediately by looking that everything had thawed. And not only had it thawed, it was completely and totally dry. So all of the stuff that melted, all the defrosting and everything, all of that was dry. So this had happened some time ago. And we determined that it happened probably shortly after dinner on Wednesday night. So like 24 hours ago. It probably happened in the night sometime. And I was not home all day. Matt and Henry were home all day. But neither of them happened to notice that it wasn't cooling properly. And so, here we are 24 hours later, and everything that was perishable perished. We lost it all. There was no saving. There was no saving a whole lot of what was in our fridge. And by the way, our refrigerator was full. So was our freezer. So the good news is we have a big freezer downstairs. We have a big stand-up freezer downstairs. So the things like vegetables and fruits that we had in bags that were in the freezer that thawed, we just immediately moved those down to the freezer to store there until we got everything figured out. So we moved into high gear. Got all the coolers out of the garage. We had, I think, 3 total. One was rather large, one was about medium, and then we had a smaller one. And so we saved what we could. There wasn't a whole lot, but we did save what we could and put those things in a cooler. We happen to have an ice dispensing machine just a few blocks away. So we sent Henry down the road, and I think he came home with at least 20 pounds of ice that night. That we got everything on ice in the coolers. We threw away a huge bin, very large, very long or wide or whatever, and deep, of meat out of the freezer. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I have no idea how much it was. It was gone before I got a chance to even pull out my camera. But let me show you what I did take video of that night. Hey guys, just thought I would just do some real time on real life emergencies happening when you don't plan on them. I just was gone for 13 hours today and came home to find that our refrigerator and freezer, neither one were cooling. We lost everything because everything is thawed and was already going bad. So here's the aftermath. So much food is gone. And this is just part of it. They already took out a whole entire huge bin of packaged meat and things like that that we had in the freezer that thawed. It's just so sad. So sad to be doing this. This was homemade. They're black beans, but also homemade sausage gravy that I made for biscuits and gravy. And I had a quart jar in the freezer. This just sucks. So as you can see, we had a mess on our hands, and there you couldn't see how much we lost, but we filled up our trash can twice. We threw out that big bin of meat. And we're talking, I don't know how many quarts or gallons that was, but I mean, it was really deep and really wide. So it was quite a financial hit to lose all of that. Now, luckily we had a lot in our pantry. We had things in our freezer, so we weren't hurting for food to eat. That wasn't the problem. It was more just the heartache of losing out on that. And then, you get past that. Okay, so you've salvaged that. Now what are you going to do about the refrigerator? Because we are not a family who can live without a refrigerator. There aren't a whole lot who could not live without a refrigerator. So we'll just go on that premises. It had to be replaced. So there were some things that we had done leading up to this that helped position us to have choices, to be able to slow down and think through this. Now, we didn't do that initially. I will tell you, we were panicked. We were in the middle of another family crisis that was going on, and Matt was gone every weekend because of that, spending time with his family. If you have been around, you know that our niece recently passed away, and that was all part of that. She was in hospice, and Matt was going to St. Louis to see her every weekend and spend time with the rest of his family. This is his sister's daughter, and it was really good family time, but it was a really sad reason why it was happening, right? And so he was grieving. He's going to school. We'd had COVID here all summer long. He himself had just gotten over COVID just a couple weeks before. And it just was a whole lot of things going on. And initially, going to bed Thursday night, waking up Friday morning, we were feeling like we have to make this decision right away and do something right now. And so we were feeling the pressure, and you need to move quickly. You obviously need to move quickly because you don't want to lose any more of your food, and you can't go too long without a refrigerator. We did remember that I do have over here off camera, I have a mini fridge up here it's one of those like 3.2 or 3.7 cubic feet. So it's not the little square one, but the taller rectangular one. So we took that downstairs into the kitchen and put it on the table. And so that helped tremendously as well. For things that weren't doing, like eggs. We were worried about the eggs, that they were okay for 24 hours, but we didn't want them to not be refrigerated any longer. And by the way, we've eaten those eggs since then, and we're all fine. So no worries there. But that said, we did our research. So the first thing was, we had three choices here. We had to determine what path we were going to take. One choice was to figure out what's wrong with it and replace the parts and fix what we have. The second option was to buy a different used one, like off of Facebook or something. And then the third option was to buy something new from a store. And that last option was truly our last option. We did not go there first. That I had no plans to do that. If we could avoid it, we were not going to be buying a new refrigerator. Spoiler alert, that's exactly what we ended up doing. But I want to share how we got there and how and why we had the time and luxury to do this, to think through all of this and determine all of this. So the first thing that happened was on Friday when we woke up, Matt made calls to several appliance service centers around here locally and could not find, I think he talked to 4, could not find a single one who services LG refrigerators. So if any of you know anything about refrigerators, you probably know that LGs are not a good brand, which we did not know. Hi. What you doing?
I'm here. My hands are pretty cold because I was eating popsicles.
Your hands are cold?
Yeah.
I feel that. So everybody, this is Bugaboo. That's what we call her. Bug.
Yeah.
You say hi?
Hi.
So this is going to be a video that Lala's going to do in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So everybody's going to see it. You remember when our refrigerator broke?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what a mess that was?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about today. Aren't you glad that we got it fixed?
Yeah.
Where were we going to keep all your cheese?
In the freezer.
Not in the freezer. You can't eat it if it's frozen. So I'm going to finish recording this, okay?
Okay.
All right. I love you. Okay. I'll see you in a little bit.
Okay.
Can you close the door?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry for that interruption, but it is a cute one. So she was just checking on me to see what I was doing. All right, so getting back to where we were. So it's Friday. Matt calls 4 service centers. All of them are saying that LGs are terrible and that they don't service them. And if you can get your hands on the parts, one, they're going to be very expensive. You can plan on, our compressor went out, and you can plan on the starting price being $1,000 and up just for the part. And you'll have to wait a long time to get that part, and good luck finding somebody to service it. So crap. I mean, that's really what we felt like. Like, okay. So that night after work, we hopped onto Facebook and we both started looking and checking within like 150 miles of here. We were willing to drive somewhere to get a refrigerator if that's what we had to do. We would have rented a truck to go do that. I mean, like, we were willing to do whatever to avoid having to buy a new refrigerator. Now, the one that broke, we bought off of Facebook about 15 months before and got a really good deal for it. We ended up not even having to pay anything for it in the end because we sold the one we had for more than we paid for the one that we bought. So it was, that's a whole other topic. But anyway, that's how we landed with this one. And we had never had an LG refrigerator before, and obviously we didn't have a good experience. And everyone is saying that you're not going to have a good experience with LG most of the time. So I had heard this along the way here and there about different things like washers and dryers, because we have an LG washer and dryer. But I didn't know enough about it to say no to LG at the time that we bought that. So here we are 15 months later and it dies. And it's clear that we're not going to be able to get anybody to service it anytime soon. And we can't keep putting things in coolers for the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. So we're panicking. So Matt needs to go to St. Louis. It's Friday night. Matt needs to go to St. Louis Saturday morning. And we're shopping frantically on Facebook to try to find something, and there wasn't anything out there that was going to meet my needs. Okay, so let me just be frank. I had some needs and some very specific things that I need out of the refrigerator, and yes, we are. I understand that we are in a place of privilege and that we can buy a big, nice, fancy refrigerator. We can afford to do that, and not everybody can. I totally get that. But I was looking for something very specific, and in particular, I wanted French doors with a freezer on the bottom. Okay, so this is what I'm looking for. I thought I needed all the bells and whistles that were on the one that broke. I couldn't find any of that. There wasn't anything that was available that was reasonably priced for being used, that is. And everything else that we were finding was basically new. And I wasn't comfortable buying off of Facebook that way. And we just, if we're going to buy off of Facebook, we just wanted to buy off the marketplace. We wanted to buy, used, and we didn't know where else to look at that point because, again, we're feeling very pressured, like we have to make a decision. And Matt needs to go out of town again. So we decided that we'd get up and go shopping for refrigerators for a new refrigerator on Saturday morning before he leaves to go out of town. This was not a good experience for a number of reasons. We went to one store and they were not staffed because they had been hit by COVID and there was nobody in the store to help us. There was another one of those stores across the river. We live in a metropolitan area that sits on the Mississippi River. There was one on the Iowa side, and we called ahead and said, do you have someone there in that department? Because we aren't getting any help here and we need to buy a refrigerator today. We get there. Everything that's in the price range that we're looking at is not available. You have to order it. It's going to take at least 2 weeks to get here. Then you're going to have to get on the list for deliveries, which might be another 2 weeks. Now we're looking at several weeks before we get a refrigerator. We are panicked. I'm literally standing in the middle of the store, and every time we gave her a model number we were interested in, it was not in stock. And all the ones that were really expensive, like over $3,000, all of those were all available. But I had a budget in mind, and after sales and whatnot, I didn't want the sticker price to be more than $2,500. And that was way out of my comfort zone, but I was holding the line on that. I did not want to pay more than $2,500. Again, we're feeling this pressure. We're not having any luck. We're going to have to order a refrigerator. There's all of these things going on, and I'm still in my head trying to figure out how we're going to move money around to make this work. When Matt has this epiphany in the store and says, you know what? Why don't we just go buy like $100 refrigerator off of Facebook, a small one, just to get us through this? And then that way it gives us time. And if we have to order something, we order something, then it's not a big deal. What a brilliant idea. I wish either of us had thought of that sometime in the 36 hours before that, but we had not. So that actually alleviated a lot of pressure. So that's one of the things that, we were lucky enough to do. We could easily get our hands on $100 and get a used refrigerator that's a lot smaller. And it served a purpose for us because when we moved in here, we tried to bring our refrigerator from our other house over here, and it would not fit down the basement stairs. We wanted a refrigerator in the basement. And we have a family room down there and everything for the kids and everything. And I wanted a place to put drinks that they didn't have to run up and down the stairs for them and everything. Anyway, that was just a luxury we didn't have because we couldn't get the refrigerator down the stairs. Now, if we buy a smaller refrigerator, when we're done with it upstairs, we can take it down to the basement. So here we are. And this solves a couple of different, I wouldn't call it a problem, but the fact that we didn't have a refrigerator downstairs and we could solve for that we would now have one was a nice to have for us. So we did manage to find one on Monday night, and the person who sold it was nice enough to deliver it for us. So we didn't have to rent a truck to go get it because we have an SUV and that's all we have. And it won't hold a refrigerator, even a small one. So fast forward, we get through the weekend. Now we have this other refrigerator. But before we got to that point, Matt headed out of town and we had some time to think now. So he was in the hotel Saturday night after being with his family and was doing research online. He couldn't sleep anyway. So he did a ton of research, sent me some articles. I was home reading those articles, going through all of them. And we learned a few things that I wanted to share with you. First of all, in this one article in particular, it was a study that they talked to, I don't know how many, I think it was at least a couple of dozen service organizations for appliances. They talked to all of these appliance repair places and the repairmen, the service workers, and every single one of them said, do not buy Samsung. And Samsung's was one of the brands that we were looking at in the store. And so every single one of them said that, and almost all of them said don't buy LG. And because of all the reasons of the trouble that we had, you can't find anybody to service it, and the parts are expensive, and it takes a long time to get them. But we were lucky enough that one of those people slowed down long enough to tell Matt, hey, your best bet in this area anyway is to buy GE or Whirlpool, KitchenAid, something like that, because everybody services those. So you won't have any problem finding somebody to repair it for you. And the parts are readily available and they are a lot less expensive. So we had that in mind, and this article supported that. And we walked away after the other things that we had looked at, plus this article that kind of really definitively set our trajectory, I guess, in that we're going to look for GE and Whirlpool and KitchenAid if we find it. But GE and Whirlpool were the two brands that we were most interested in. My mom has had a Whirlpool refrigerator for as long as I can remember. She loves it. And so I actually started looking for Whirlpool. But I ended up finding a GE that I really liked. And another thing that we learned through this is that buying the bells and whistles is not always a good thing. So the reason why is because those bells and whistles, especially if you try to put an ice maker in the refrigerator or in the door of the refrigerator, there's often a lot of service calls on those, because that's just it's not meant to happen that way, to try to freeze inside of a cold space and that isn't a freezer. And also if you have the dispensers on the door, that can cause a lot of service calls as well, because a lot of times those will go wrong somehow. So they said your best bet is to have to have the ice maker in the freezer. And if you want a water dispenser, don't have it in the door, have it in the refrigerator itself. So I found one that had all of that. And it was priced right. It was a really good price, but it wasn't available in the color that I needed. And I really tried to talk myself into being okay with a different color. So I did that. I'm like, this is a really good price. This is silly that you are hung up on a color. But I have to live in this space. And I didn't realize how important that was to me until I was faced with making that decision. And apparently it's very important to me. So I couldn't stomach it. I'm like, no, I can't do it. So then in the middle of this, while Matt was gone for the weekend, and we're chatting back and forth about, all of this and doing our research, he said, what do you think about going to this local place instead of the chain that we were going to, since we learned that we couldn't get a veterans discount at the chain like we thought that we could. He said, if we can't get the veterans discount there, why don't we just look anywhere? So we went to a local store right here down the street from us, not very far. And when I say we went to the store, we went online and looked at their inventory. They had that refrigerator, the exact same model that I couldn't get from the chain store. So on Monday, we both happened to work from home that day, and we were having lunch down in the kitchen at the same time, talking about the refrigerators. And Matt was asking about that, and I said, you know what? Why don't we just call them? I haven't looked at anything. Let's just call them. And here's the thing, is that not only did we call on the day that the shipment came in, apparently this model sells so fast they can't even get a display out on the floor for us to go look at. He said every time we get a shipment in, we sell these before we can get them unpacked. So there was a shipment there, and the model that I wanted in the color that I wanted was available, and it was the same price as what was listed for the chain store. So this is all fantastic. So we over the phone, I'm like, I want it. We're buying it. What do you need from us today to get us on the delivery schedule? So, and by the way, it's Monday the 25th, I think, and the 25th of July, and it was going to be delivered the following Monday on August 1st. So we went from having a 2 to 4 week, time frame here to returning this around and fixing the problem in 10 days, which is amazing. He goes to write up the order and gets back on, he put me on hold and comes back and says, well, your timing is really, really good, because this shipment is on sale, and this is actually this price, not the one you're seeing online. The new price was $450 less than what we planned on paying, than what it was listed for. This was like, it was just getting better and better. It's like we felt all this pressure to make a decision quickly, and we felt like we had to do that on Saturday, and giving it 48 hours and doing our research really, really gave us perspective and the opportunity to catch the sale. We never would have caught that if we had hurried over the weekend and made a decision. The price, the $450 price covered everything. So it covered we got an extended warranty for 5 years. It covered the delivery and the haul away and the taxes, everything except $50. I could not believe it. We got this whole thing for probably $800 less than we would have if I'd stuck to that $2,500 threshold for the list price, right? So, okay, now that I've shared all of that with you, let me talk about why we were able to do this. We bought and paid $2,200 for a new refrigerator. Oh, and when the guys came to deliver it, they were nice enough. We paid them some cash separate from the delivery fee that we'd already paid. We paid them some cash to move that smaller refrigerator down to the basement for us, which was such a blessing because it would have been so much harder for us to do it. So let's circle back to how could we even have this kind of flexibility, right? Because I know not everybody has, a couple $1,000s to throw at a refrigerator. So we have sinking funds, and we have a lot of them. And I've talked about them a lot on the channel, and the fact that, they're there for when you need them. We also, in addition to sinking funds, which are typically a savings account that are meant for something specific, and it might be a short-term goal or an ongoing thing. Like I have one for auto insurance because every 6 months we have to pay our auto insurance premiums. But I also have one for vacation and another one for things that don't happen all the time, right? So you can set a goal amount on those, like a cap, and when you get to that, then you funded it. That's what a sinking fund is. An emergency fund is separate. It's like a sinking fund, but an emergency fund is money that you're setting aside for emergencies. And if we didn't have our sinking fund, our emergency fund is where we would have had to go. We were lucky enough that we had enough in our sinking funds that we could cover the cost of the refrigerator without having to take from the emergency fund. So to give you an idea, we had just under $5,000 in our emergency fund, and we had, I think, about $7,000 or $8,000 total in our sinking funds. Now, I will say those sinking funds, some of that money was spoken for. Like, I can't touch it because we actually have something coming up that we have to use it for to pay for it. But we managed. What happened was we had been saving up a vacation that we were going to take next year that we have decided not to take. And so we had about $2,400 in that account, and we were able to use that to pay the $2,200 for our refrigerator. So everything happened to align like that for us. And I know it's not always, it doesn't always happen like that. I get that. But if something should happen with your refrigerator, the fact that your food source is, threatened, right? Your food supply is threatened and things like that. That's the emotional crisis that comes from that, the strain, the stress, that's enough to put anybody through the ringer. But when you add financial stress to it and having to worry about that too, it makes it so much harder. It's so much harder to think straight and to think through everything. And for us, because we had really set ourselves up because we had been saving all this money. And, if I didn't have the money in the vacation fund, we absolutely would have pulled it out of the emergency fund and then funded the emergency fund again and built that back up. So All of this to say, it is really important to have an emergency fund because really this is an emergency fund thing. And did we have to spend $2,200 on a refrigerator? No, we didn't. We did not. We could have gotten a decent one for $500. But that was not the decision that we made, and we're okay with that. We did what we needed to meet our needs. The moral of the story for all of this is the importance of sinking funds and an emergency fund in your personal finance journey. If you are in the middle of paying off debt, having those things in place, not necessarily, you don't have to have, we have over 20 sinking funds. I'm not suggesting that everyone should do that, but there are some basic sinking funds that are really important for you to have to help you get through, because there are things that are going to happen. It does not matter what your circumstances are. It's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. And you need to have some money set aside for those things so that you don't have to reach for a credit card or take out a loan to help cover something. And, even if you were in a scenario where you were buying a refrigerator for $800 and you only had $400 on hand, that makes that easier if all you have to figure out is the other $400. So I hope you're following me on this. I'm trying to share this with, the thought here of the importance of having those tools in your toolbox through your journey. So our refrigerator died. It was not a financial crisis for us. I'm not saying I didn't think about the money, but I didn't worry about the money. I didn't worry. It was in my head, and I was trying to figure out how we were going to get everything where we needed to get it. Because, by the way, I forgot to say this at the beginning. The day before the refrigerator died, I moved all of our sinking funds from one bank over to another bank, and they were sitting in limbo. They weren't available in either one in that moment. So it was, made things a little bit harder. It all worked out fine. We just had to wait a couple days for it to hit. But if we didn't have them, it just would have been so much harder. So I hope that this, kind of story time and lessons learned kind of thing will help, you get set up for whatever might be coming down the pipe at you. You can do everything right, but things are still going to go wrong. So be prepared for that. Establish whatever sinking funds you need, establish your emergency fund. And this video isn't all about the emergency fund, but I will say if you can get at least 1 month of expenses in your emergency fund. So we just hit that threshold for us. We want to have, 3 to 6 months is a fully funded emergency fund, but you want to have at least 1 month of expenses so that if something happens, if you lose your income, you can be covered for a few weeks, or if something like this happens, you can cover it. I do have some videos with a playlist about sinking funds, so I am going to leave that for you right over here. Make sure that you click on that and check it out, and I will meet you over there.